All right, I think we're live. Okay. Yep, excellent. Okay, I think we're all set here. Hello, everyone. Brock Beard from lastcar.info. I'll wait till we get some more people in here before we get to the meat of the discussion. First of all, again, I want to certainly hope that you all are doing okay and just checking in with you guys. I know that we're passing the 1 month mark into this shelter in place and everything for a lot of us, and we're all trying to get through it. I'm doing okay over here. I just hope that you all are doing well over there. And that's certainly going to be the topic on what we're going to be talking about here today. Haven't posted a lot of stuff to the second channel here, obviously, with the season being suspended with everything going on. My original intention, just in starting this channel earlier this year, was to just talk about news events in the sport, put the race recaps and everything in here. Obviously, with what's happened, that hasn't really been necessary lately. Do the trivia segments on the main channel, and obviously last week's trivia segment kind of morphed into really more of a discussion of the Kyle Larson situation. So that one kind of ended up being a little bit of both. But generally speaking, news stories, kind of commentary, and things like that are going to be mostly on this channel. So thank you to those of you who have subscribed to this channel, and certainly hope to have some more content on here as well as things figure out. We've got about 3 people in here. We'll go ahead and get started into the main part of this. The reason I wanted to open the live stream here, and we'll see how long we keep it up here in terms of how much discussion comes in, is to raise the issue of where we go from here. I think that's been the subject several times this season already, even for how few races that we've had. The issue, of course, with the ongoing pandemic and the shelter-in-place orders, and where we are, how much longer those restrictions are going to be necessary. What brings us up today is, of course, there was word from some politicians in North Carolina proposing a return to normalcy of some kind with the Coca-Cola 600 at the end of next May. Although without fans in the stands. Florida had raised the same issue earlier, that among their proposals was having a NASCAR race held at some point, in the near future, and even discussions about other races near Charlotte and running those races in May and in that same area. This at the same time that states like Virginia have extended their shelter in place into June, which is already now canceled or postponed, rather, the early May race at Martinsville that was going to be scheduled under the lights there. That was originally going to be NASCAR's return. From what we had originally heard from NASCAR themselves, that has now been pushed back. The Sonoma Raceway yesterday, also in local news, said that they would rather have their event postponed than have races with no people in the stands. But so there's a whole scattering here of what these different tracks want to do, and it's certainly a microcosm of what has been going on with people's decision about how we do actually try to find a way out of this, where the light at the end of the tunnel is, and how we're actually going to get there. Obviously, I think the biggest thing to bring up in any discussion on this is to not downplay the seriousness of the pandemic, the seriousness of the issue with that. This is not a it's not just the flu. It's not any of that stuff either. I mean, this is this very serious condition that is targeting specifically the most vulnerable people in our society, whether it's older people or people with immune conditions and all that. And there's also been further reports from other sources, and that again, even those restrictions aren't necessarily exclusive. I mean, certainly their original beliefs that people that were in younger age groups wouldn't be susceptible to it. That has since proven to not be the case. So clearly, any decision that is going to be made to reopen things in any form is going to affect all of us. It is not going to just affect a portion of the population. And we're all going to have to deal with the consequences of this, because once things are opened, I believe, at any degree, it's going to have to keep going in that direction. I think it would be very difficult to open things and then close them a second time. So we all want to make sure that when the decision is made, whether at the federal level or the state level, because there's, of course, a lot of very interesting constitutional debates about how that works. It's going to be it's going to be very much of a challenge. So again, I think in any discussion of this, we can't downplay the seriousness of this condition. Also, can't downplay how important it is to flatten the curve and be in a situation where the resources of our medical facilities aren't stretched beyond their means. A lot has been done. A lot. I have said this in previous streams before. A lot has been done, even at the particular medical facility that I work at, in just this space of the last month or so, and seeing how much work has been done to completely restructure our approach to treatment, expand our facilities, expand the resources that we have and the assets we're able to use to do that. And I said, as I said in last week's stream on the main channel, that if every hospital in the country is doing that, or even anything close to that, I think that they're going to be handling this situation very well. And I think that we'll be in very good shape. But I think also at the same time, we have to look at the future. I think we also have to look ahead to when this is going to end. I think it's at least, I think now that we are in a month into this, and that we know now what we do know now that we did not know when this all started, I don't believe that it is too early to start looking at where we go from here and where we end this. I don't think that we're talking about things that are going to be done immediately, like not today. We're not going to just say, okay, well, today we're just going to treat this like it never happened. I don't believe anybody is for that. I am certainly not. But I don't believe that it is too early to at least raise the issue about where we go from here and what things are going to be looking like. Because okay, if it's not going to be a situation where we fly the doors open and we just act like nothing else ever happened, well, okay, we need to start asking these questions. We need to start figuring this out. And I think that the proposal, especially the one in North Carolina, is the appropriate. I think it's appropriate to at least consider it. And again, it's important to remember that this is just a proposal. This is nothing that is firmly is firmly being put out there and just saying like, oh no, they have no choice but to do it. No, it's a proposal being put forward to higher elected officials, and they can choose to just disregard it, and then everything just kind of stays the way it is, or they can at least consider it. And then even how they figure that out, that's where they're going to have to work it out. But I do think that we do need to start considering it, and I think the reasons are this: we can't have this be the normal. We can't have this just continue to be the way it is. Think about all the things that have happened in this month and all the progress that has been made. A month ago at this point, we were basically just at the start of the shelter in place. We didn't know what the effect was going to be on the economy. We barely knew anything about what this disease was acting like, who was most susceptible to it. We were even still figuring out the shelter in place regulations. Social distancing was just beginning to be a term that we were all getting used to. And these are all things that we were just kind of figuring out. And in just that 1 month, look at all that has happened since then. Look at all, it's almost like we have this protocol in place because everybody has been pulling together and making sure that, okay, we wear masks when we go out in public, that we're avoiding human contact as much as possible. We have done a tremendous amount, and I am proud of a lot, of people in all walks of life for coming together on this. And I think that whatever, and I think that's another thing we need to consider when something is done here, that we don't lose that, that we all kind of come together and realize that this is something that we all need to that we can all get behind, and that is the solution that we can all be satisfied with. But at the same time, I want to kind of tack around to this, but I don't want to ignore the full part of this too. In relation to, again, the seriousness of the condition and how widespread it is a pandemic, a literal one. It is involving the entire world. It isn't just us. It isn't just this country. It isn't just the state. It's everybody. We are in a very big situation that is involving all of us. And there is a lot in the worst case scenario. If this is done improperly, yes, it could be extremely serious, especially to the people in those groups, especially to people that are most susceptible to respiratory infections and everything of that sort. But I think that the other problem is that we have to keep in mind that there are a lot of people that are hurting now while the curve is being flattened and while these measures have been taken. And it's very important to keep that in mind. I think that a lot of people, even the people that are questioning this and just discussing it online there, they're being mindful of this too. But it does need to be raised that there are a lot of people that are out of work. There are a lot of people that are unable to get unemployment. We now have lines at food banks, people trying to, just make ends meet for the most basic elements. I know that there have been a lot of things on social media that have tried to kind of romanticize the element of the quarantine as just a means of getting through it, and people just trying to make ends meet and get through it as best they can. But I do think that we cannot ignore, while there's a lot of good, I believe, that's happened, and people just have been rallying together. It's not going to change the fact that there are a lot of people that are very much hurt by this, and their lives and their livelihoods and everything else. And there's a lot of damage that has been done. I am reminded of what has happened here in California just last fall, and again from personal experience. One thing that was a big issue last year, it was PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric, recently lost a major settlement against after some very serious forest fires that happened up here, and very serious gas line explosions and things like that, systems that weren't properly maintained, situations that quickly grew out of control for a number of various factors. And so last fall, whenever things were windy or whenever PG&E deemed that certain fire conditions were in place, they would just shut off the power and just shut it off completely, and with no indication when the power was ever going to come back on again. And and this isn't just like a typical power outage where like maybe it happens in the middle of the night, you don't notice it, you wake up and you reset your clock. No, we're talking about multiple days that the power is out completely. And how many people have a generator? Not many people do. And so the power is out. You don't know when it's going to come back on. You're checking on your phone to see the PG&E website and say, oh, well, they know that your power is out in your zone. When is it going to be back up? Well, they don't know. And then, okay, the power comes back up. Well, in the meantime, what's happened? Your food is spoiled. You got to throw it all out. You have, every electronic in your house has just been shut off. What if you're somebody that has a medical condition, you have to be plugged into a machine or something like that? Maybe you have a generator for that or anything, but I don't know. So we have a situation where we have this thought of just this on again, off again thing. And there are some things that just can't be switched on and off for any reason. And this, in this case, was a particularly alarming situation. Now, obviously, there are disasters that happen and the power is out for a long period of time. I know that it may sound like a trivial concern, me talking about power being out for just a couple of days up here in California, when say a flood happens in the Midwest or a hurricane happens in the Southeast, and maybe the power is out for weeks. But at that point, the power outage is the least of your problems, of course. There's so many more awful things that happen during hurricanes and other acts of God and everything that are very serious conditions. In this one here, much like what has been going on during this pandemic, this was a preventative measure that was put in with no clear indication of when it was going to end. And this with, everything properly functioning and everything fine, not having a disaster scenario on top of the power outage. And yet it was incredibly disruptive here in California. It wasn't so much an issue here in the immediate Bay Area, but there were a lot of other counties, including where my parents live, where they had the power out several days. And it was the same kind of thing. They had to throw out their food, they had to do all that. And, they had to make do as best they can. And I know that it may not seem like, having the power out would be like that big of a deal. Oh, great. Everybody can just kind of come together. Everybody can just read. Everybody can just, do that. Much like we're seeing with the pandemic now. Oh, well, everybody's at home. Everybody can hang out together. There's a lot of positive things from that. Well, that can only go for so long, though. The world does not operate in a situation where things can just be turned off and everything just functions properly. And then you just turn it back on again, and everything just goes back to the way it used to be. This was a very small situation compared to what has happened now, but I'm constantly reminded of it because it was a very serious situation. And there's still no indication that we're not going to still have that same problem up here this fall. And you would think, okay, well, wait a minute. If their concern is to prevent fires and to prevent explosions or anything like that, well, why don't they just fix their equipment? Why don't they just clear brush out? Well, there's been a lot of other regulations on that that have gotten in the way of it, and it's a whole mess. I'm not going to go too deep into that there, for state politics there, because I know everybody lives in different states and they got different different countries. I'm seeing from the comments already, they have different situations, but I do believe that it's symptomatic of this mentality that in some cases we can anticipate worst case scenarios and navigate our way around them and create protocols that have no clear ending in place, and that everybody's going to be okay and everybody's going to be able to work through it that way. And I think that we're seeing a lot of the same hallmarks in the situation with this pandemic. And yes, much like a serious forest fire caused by negligent maintenance of PG&E equipment, a pandemic where you have potentially serious conditions, respiratory conditions for people, is equally serious, if not more so. I mean, so many more people are more susceptible. Again, we're talking about the whole world, not just in California. But at some point, you have to look past it, and you have to come to a situation where this cannot be the norm. We cannot just continue to just stay sheltered in place. And so many people are hurting during these preventative measures. And it's good to see that a lot of people are not. It's good to see that a lot of people are coming together and trying to find their way through it. But a lot of people that are in other industries, that are not deemed essential, they can't go to work, and they can't. And there's a lot of people's businesses where they can't work from home. Well, and there's a lot of people trying to fix the infrastructure and fix things in such a way that more people are able to operate in this way and work the best they can. But it's not a perfect system, and we don't have that all in place, and it's not been good for anybody in that. And I know that we can look outside this, of course, and look, nobody asked for this to happen. It's an unfortunate series of events that happen in other places that spread over here. And there's a lot, I'm not going to get into the whole politics of it because you're hearing enough about that from the mainstream news. But I think that when there's a effort to at least raise the issue of where we go from here and the possibility of some semblance of normalcy, and again, not throwing the doors open and acting like everything from before, but with proper protocols in place, keeping in mind that we have now had a month of social distancing, of washing your hands, of not touching your face, of wearing masks, we've all been really trained now to be aware of this, to be that vigilant and have these assets available. I think now is the time to start looking at where we go from there and how much further it's going to be, because much like with NASCAR, some of these original ideas about how much longer it's going to be are now getting nudged a little further down the line. And we can't overlook the fact that a lot of those people that are not working and are struggling and are stressed and are angry, they're going to be even more angry. And again, I'm not calling for anything to happen, not at all. I'm just saying this is just human nature. People are going to get to a point where it's going to be a serious problem. And the problem of and again, it's a cost benefit analysis. I know, Ben, I know you were talking about this and talking about weighing the risks. I think that was a very good point. One of the reasons I wanted to do this live stream here. We do have to do a cost benefit analysis in all of this. At what point does the medicine become a poison? I think that's what we need to keep in mind. At what point is at what point is vigilance become hypervigilance? At what point have we reached a point where we have done the very best that we can do, that we have held back the waters as long as we can before the dam just fails and we just go right back into having people operate? I don't know the answer. And again, much like I talked about in last week's thing, I don't know what the answer is, but I think we need to have the discussion to find out where that is. I think we need to, again, have that tolerance in there to understand where everybody else is coming from. And okay, yeah, here in the United States, a $1,200 check given to the average person or the average family, that's not going to get them very far, because okay, you're at home, you're sheltering in place, you're following the orders, you're away from everybody else, but your electricity bill is still coming in, your gas bill is coming in, your cable bill, your car insurance, everything else is still coming in. Those things are not going to stop because those businesses are still trying to keep themselves going. And no person is an island. No person is able to just completely shut this down. And I think that's really the issue. I'm just saying, I'm not saying that what's being proposed by Charlotte or Texas is the right answer. I mean, again, but I do think it needs to be taken under consideration, much like I believe that it is in the case of North Carolina and in Texas. I don't believe anybody is just rubber stamping this and sending it down the line. I think that, but I do think we're at the point now where we need to have the conversation. We need to start talking about it. And I think that's one thing that we need to keep in mind. So I don't really have too much more to add on that. I could probably ramble on a lot further on this, but I definitely want to get my thoughts out there on this. I'm sure it's going to be very interesting looking at this channel quite in the past, because I know I did the video. I think one of the last ones I did before this happened was the Better Safe Than Sorry video when the shutdown is. And of course, I still stand by that. We didn't know what this was. We didn't know what the situation was. But look at how much has happened in this month. And it's possible by the middle or the end of May, we're going to know even more. Maybe we will have testing in place. Maybe we'll know, maybe we'll have some kind of breakthrough on the disease and understand it better and understand, maybe have a new means of protocol that's even more effective than what we have. What we've put in place, much like restrictor plates, if we want to keep this in a NASCAR context, was a temporary solution to a very clear problem. And I have faith that those that are involved in finding a solution to this problem are working the very hardest that they can to get it as soon as they can. And that's why we're here. And it's frustrating. I share your frustration as somebody that's still working during this whole thing here, that we don't know what the serious issue is, and we don't know what we don't know how much more serious this is going to be, and we just do not know. But I think that, and I don't want to sound callous in this, but if nothing else, something like a proposal where you have people out there, that are, maybe you have like a sporting event. I'm not even saying with NASCAR. It's going to sound horribly skewed that this comes up there because a NASCAR thing was proposed to be the result. It's like, oh, we want to get back to that. Well, yeah, we want to get back to everything. But I think even if it's not that, maybe the answer isn't a NASCAR event. Maybe the answer is opening up a town or opening up a county and just observing it and using the scientific method and say, okay, well, look, how much more is the spread, and containing it in such a way that the assets we do have are able to take care of those people, and some kind of proposal like that. Maybe something like that would be the solution. But we need to start talking about getting in a situation where we do little things like that and move ourselves on the way, because it's not going to happen with all of us just sitting in our houses and watching YouTube and walking outside for 15 minutes and then coming back in and then staying in there and being sheltered and scared. It's not helpful to anybody. So we need to start looking at solutions. We need to start considering them. Is this going to be the right solution? Maybe not. But I think we need to at least talk about it. And I'm glad that they're looking far enough in the future now to something that's a month out, where if things change and if there is a continued spike in these cases, then of course we re-examine that again. We don't say, oh, well, you promised we were going to do this. No. We re-examine it at that point, and then we move it a little bit further down the line. But at least show people that you're trying. At least show people that you understand their concerns, that you understand what they're going through, and give it a chance there. Exactly. Yeah. A soft rollout. I like that comment, said Head. Exactly. Just something that kind of gets us very gradually, that just something that gets the ball rolling. Because I don't think, this is going to be something where we'll be able to wake up one day and just say, oh, the economy's open again. Let's just keep going, and everybody, crowds into as big crowds as possible. I do think that if there's a situation where if it was just crowds by itself and a lot of people were still getting sick from it, you wouldn't even be able to have hospitals operate. You wouldn't be able to have grocery stores operate. And there are a lot of people, but there's a lot of people out there that are still working in that sense. You wouldn't be able to be allowed to go to the grocery store. And I think that maybe that's already the test that we're looking at now. It's like, okay, we've gone down to these essential services and seen how much, how many more cases come from that. and what's the percentage of that, and where is certain areas where it's worse than others, and what are the things like that. It's a lot of statistics, I'm sure, that have to get figured out in this. But I do think that that's but and maybe they have those results, and that's why they're starting to look at these proposals. Who knows? I mean, I know these tracks are businesses. They all want to get back to business just as quickly as everybody else does, or at least some semblance of it. I know that, but I think that that's the important thing to keep in mind in whatever gets proposed from forward is balancing these risks and knowing that there's a lot of there's a lot of hurt that has already been done. There's a lot of damage that has already been done. A lot of people's lives seriously disrupted, and in some cases even worse. There's been a lot of that. And we all need to, take care of them as best we can. Much like we need to, come together and stay together on that. And I think that's something that most of us can keep in mind. Yeah. And again, I'm looking at, I appreciate the comments here on that too. I'm just kind of glancing at that. Said Ed, Benjamin, and everybody, and Stephen C. Thanks for joining in the conversation on that. I think that this is something that's very it's very important. It's well beyond NASCAR, much like the Kyle Larson situation. It's something that's much larger than NASCAR, but of course, much like the Kyle Larson situation, the discussion seems to be evolving because something in NASCAR is kicking it off. Now, obviously, a more positive aspect in this, but I think that that's what we're looking at. So I'm very curious what you guys think. I appreciate the comments here in this, and certainly if you're watching this later, make sure you post a comment in the comment section below. I'd love to see it, and keep this going. I hope to have some more things on there. Said Ed, I see your comment on there again. The mental health, the ability to just to cope with it there, the intangibles that can't be overstated. And again, yeah, if photography is your means of doing it. Yeah, I can only imagine how difficult that is when you just don't have the ability to do that. I just took a walk today, and I haven't really. I used to do that a lot more often, and I'm trying to convince myself to go out there and do it again, little steps, just basically to the end of the block of that. But I feel so much better doing it, and I think that's the important thing too. That's something that they're telling us at the hospital is do the things as best you can to keep your mental health where it needs to be. And I hate, Said Head, that your particular aspect has been affected that much, but I hope that certainly there's something out there that you can find as well that gives you that inner peace and moves forward on that. And I think that's going to be the important thing on that. So yeah, and then Stephen C., I just see your comment on here about discussions about new drugs coming out. I don't know anything personally. That's well above my pay grade at work, so I can't really comment too much on that. I know that they're certainly trying some things, but I don't really have specifics or anything on that. But again, I again laud the work that they are doing, as with all essential services personnel. But I think in this one here, and I left this hanging in last week's thing. I also want to again congratulate all of you for bearing with us during all this at the same time, because I know that this has been a hard situation for you guys, and we, as well as you, are looking. There is no we and you. We're all in this together, and we're all trying to find the way out of it. I certainly hope that the most positive outlooks on this are true, and that sometime next month we can even get. Gosh, if we can get anything going, maybe some non-essential businesses to get back in business. Maybe some sporting events, maybe even on a smaller scale, either with no crowds or with crowds spaced out, or whatever the solution is. If we get at least on that path in this next month, I think that is going to do a lot of good in many ways. So, yeah, and see, there you go. Yeah, Benjamin. Yeah, exactly. If you're working at a campus and then you can't work at the campus, I mean, yeah, I hate it. I hate it. I hate it for you guys. I feel bad in this situation that we suddenly had this situation where they have to deem what's essential, what's not essential. I think it's a stupid, statement that they would even come up with that, because it almost creates this rift in the work world where you say, oh, well, this isn't essential. Oh, that's not essential. It's essential to the people that work there. It's essential to the businesses and the people that count on them. I don't think there is such a thing as a non-essential business in the strict term. I know that's not what they mean in terms of scaling things back and all that. Everybody's essential. I don't think anybody's going to argue with that. But I think that, I think that's what makes this has been, a frustrating situation there. So, and I share, and again, we're seeing this in all facets. I was very struck by Jeff Gluck's article this morning, saying that the iRacing races, it's like, look, we're trying to treat them. Not everybody's been treating them like the real thing, but some, such as himself, have been trying to treat it like it's the real thing and keeping in there since it's that. But he just can't keep doing that. And there is no replacement for normal human social interaction. There's no replacement, just as there is no replacement for watching an actual sport. And I think if there is something positive that's going to become about from this, it perhaps a reminder that maybe, heck, maybe we're going to be spending more time outside and in large groups than we used to at some point. Of course, when it's more safe to do so, not before that point. But when things do get back better, maybe this is going to be for the better of all of us in that situation. And looking at it positively, that's all we have to do on that. I know when I write about the iRacing things, I kind of do the articles in such a point where I'm just kind of having fun with it. That's why if somebody raised it the other day on Twitter and say, well, you should use statistics from other iRaces. And I'm like, well, gosh, I hope that's not going to be necessary. I'm treating it just more like they're exhibition races. They're in their own category. They're their own thing. If you notice, like when I do the All-Star race or the Showdown or anything like that, I usually just compare it to other runnings of the Showdown. I mean, well, I guess that's a bad example because they have their own statistics brought up there, but they're separate from the points races that way. So, yeah, but yeah, I think that's kind of where we're looking at going forward. So I do applaud the efforts with iRacing and that they have done what they have done to try to fill the gap as best as possible. But and as I tweeted this morning, I also do feel vindicated. Well, although my mind has certainly been changed, of course, that iRacing is no threat to the real thing. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, but it's its own thing with its own fan base, with its own supporters. It has its own things that make it special. You mentioned fantasy tracks, perfect example. I think that would be fantastic. Things that make it, things that you're able to do that you wouldn't be able to do in real life. I mean, it's great seeing Bobby Labonte compete in it. I retweeted the message and sent it over to Jerry Nadeau. Hopefully he gets out there. I think it'd be fantastic. I apologize. I hope he's cool with me posting that message on there, but he was so shy during the discussion that we had online last year. I felt it was better to ask for forgiveness than for permission. So, and yeah, if we get a situation where retired drivers or anything are more involved in this iRacing thing, I think that would be fantastic. And it would eliminate the possibility of a Larry Pearson situation where a driver would potentially put themselves at serious risk, but would still be able to enjoy the spirit of competition, especially among one's peers. I know that kind of goes separate from the main thrust of the discussion, but I agree with that. Yeah, it's a tricky situation. Sedhead, I know you guys are struggling up there in Canada. You guys got your own. Every country is treating this different. Every state, every region is treating this different. We don't know where this is all going to fall out, but hopefully we all kind of get to that point around the same time without too much variance. That would certainly be the best possible situation there. Yeah, I know. Shout out to Rob Taylor up there in Canada as well. I know. It seemed like it was ages ago now since we were up there, even though it was just last September. Enjoyed being up there. People up there are fantastic. Had no issues with that. But yeah. Oh, they're further ahead. Well, that's okay. Well, that's fantastic news. Well, maybe we'll be following your lead. You never know. These are unusual times, and we don't know how it's really going to progress. And yeah, certainly anything that gets us to that point, I think we're all going to be for. So Bernie Ecclestone, yeah. I mean F1. Oh, I mean it seems so trivial to talk about it, but I do feel for so many people that are fans of different sports and everything. For some, like basketball and hockey, this is completely disrupted what would be either their championship season or very close to it. For others, where the season hasn't started, like IndyCar, Formula One, it's even cast into question even doing a season altogether. So we're getting back to even times like in World War situations where World War I or World War II, where they wouldn't even be able to open the track because everybody's fighting this battle. And then of course in the middle of this you have NASCAR, which has a season that's so unusually long. we have now had the ability to run the first part of it, and now not a question of whether it's going to end. Nobody's coming out of this unscathed. In that sense, it's an unfortunate situation, but I think it could just be that this year is just going to be a series of exhibition races, and or is there even going to be a championship in this? I don't know. I know for me personally, I'm looking at Sears Point this year. Whenever they run it, I got the vacation off already for June, and now the folks at the track there 2 months out are saying, well, they're not going to run it. Well, that's unfortunate, but they don't really have any choice. I mean, this is how far ahead people have to look on these things, and it's now a chance. They don't really want to run it with any people in the stand, and I know that's an awful situation too. But this is kind of where things are on that. But hopefully we're getting there. I mean, worst case scenario for me personally, I'm looking at doing the Phoenix finale in November, and I don't know if this is going to make it easier or harder to get to that, if that does turn out to still be the finale, or if we're going to be in a completely different situation and maybe it's just like an exhibition and we just look to do a hard reset in 2021. That still seems so far away that I don't know, but we're all in this barrel together and going over the falls. I don't know what it's gonna be like when we land on this one, guys. So, but yeah, even in the hospital, I have no idea. So again, I want to shout out to everybody, not just to the folks over in the essential services and to the folks over at the hospital I work at there, but also the people outside that. But to all of you that are looking to make ends meet during this. I certainly wish you all the very best. I hope to put some more content out here to help pass the time. I have a video that I'm working on that I got some good work on. The Patreon members already know what the subject of it is, but more progress has been made on that. I'd like to get that up. I was originally saying the end of this month. I'd love to get it up by the end of this week, even though the end of this week's pretty close to the end of the month anyway. But we're getting to that point there. So stay tuned for more content on the main channel and more content as things come up here on this second channel as well in the news. But thank you everybody for tuning in. I'm going to pretty much leave it be there. Make sure you trivia. We're going to do that on the main channel. We'll do trivia on a separate video, Steven. Maybe I don't know if I'm going to do it tomorrow. I'll probably do it here tomorrow or Wednesday. We'll see about that. I'll try to remember. I got some other stuff I'm working on this week. In between, but we'll probably do just the trivia videos on the main channel so we get as much traffic as possible. But yeah, the news ones like this we're going to put on the second channel here and go ahead. I'm glad you like the trivia. I'm glad that helps in some small way. I have the car right here, so we always keep it well on hand. So we're going to keep looking ahead to that. Thank you again for everyone for tuning in. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, so you can stay tuned for more stuff on this second channel as well as the first one. And yeah, again, leave your comments below, and love to see what's your thoughts on that. And we'll stay tuned for more stories. All right, thank you, everyone.